Well, hi, everybody. It's really good to, and very excited about our next session. And welcome to our last fireside chat of the symposium. Thank you all for your continued energy and enthusiasm. We've had a terrific day and a half, and this next session I think will prove to be very, I think, strategic and informative, and we look forward to your questions.
We are very pleased to have this session with our colleagues from the grant agencies or grant council. And this session is about the role of granting councils in the innovation ecosystem.
Who are research leaders in Canada's granting agencies on the role that college applied research plays in Canada's innovation ecosystem. And given what we've been talking about over the last day and a half about the growing research intensity, breadth, and impact of college-led applied research, we're really looking forward to having a conversation about how this can be even more amplified, leveraged, mobilized to address Canada's most pressing public policy challenges. And it's really, I think you've been hearing us talk a lot about sort of mission-driven research, challenge-driven research. What are we talking about? And so this is going to be a chance to really unpack that a little bit. And I think that, you know, we've also been talking about some of the realities of the network that you represent, that Canadian colleges and institutes are within 50 kilometers, that 95% of Canadians live within 50 kilometers of a Canadian college or institute. And so our network is absolutely fundamentally key to driving impact of Canada's federal research investments across the country. So I'm going to introduce our three esteemed fireside chatters, and then we're going to get started with some questions. So to my immediate right, we have Manal Bahubeshi, who is the Vice President of Research Partnerships with the Natural Sciences and Engineering Council of Canada. Manal joined NSERC in October 2020, serving first as Associate Vice President of Research Partnerships, leading a talented executive team responsible for the operations and delivery of research partnerships programming for colleges and universities. She guided the expansion of strategic partnerships and the launch of NSERC's alliance programming in support of the Government of Canada's National Quantum Strategy. And I learned through reading her bio that she and I share, having done our graduate work at the Norman Paterson School of International Affairs at Carleton. I did not know that.
I'm not a scientist or an engineer. They still let me.
Yeah. Next to Manal, to her right, is the Vice President and relatively new Vice President of Programs and Planning, Dr. Mohamad Nasser-Eddine at the Canada Foundation for Innovation. And he is responsible for managing all aspects of CFI's research infrastructure funding programs and providing leadership and advice for developing policies relevant to these programs. Additionally, he champions CFI's commitment to accountability and organizational excellence through the rigorous assessment and analysis of the outcomes and impacts of CFI investments in research infrastructure. Mohamad returns to CFI after some time at Ottawa University, right? And we're really grateful that he is here and that some of his team have been here over the last couple of days, as well as the teams of both Manal and Sylvie as well. Mohamad completed a master's and PhD in chemistry, so he's a chemist at l'Université de Haute-Alsace in France, an executive MBA with a concentration in technology management at UQAM. And to his right is our final esteemed fireside chatter, Sylvie Lamoureux. Sylvie is a proud Franco-Ontarian, and she joined SSHRC as the Vice President Research in January 2023. In this role, she provides strategic leadership for the development, implementation, and promotion of the vision and direction of social sciences and humanities and tri-agency federal research funding programming. A full professor at the University of Ottawa, where she served as Vice Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Associate Vice Provost of Graduate Studies. As a researcher, scholar, educator, and pedagogue, she favors applied research, which is awesome for us. And her work focuses on the student experience to and through post-secondary, most notably on transitions, both social and academic. And we were having a terrific conversation over lunch yesterday about those transitions, including for those who bring different learning challenges and strengths to going into post-secondary, including folks like my two sons. So I was really learning a lot from Sylvie about her research. She earned her PhD from OISE U of T and completed a SSHRC postdoctoral fellowship with Glenn Jones, also at OISE. So please join me in welcoming our three guests. So what we're going to do now is have a conversation which will talk about, like we did yesterday, a few key questions that we are going to have each of our guests sort of tackle, and then we're going to open up the floor as well to make sure that we involve you in our fireside chat. So let's get started. So we wanted to start with a bit of a blue sky question, and Manal's going to kick off, and then I'll invite Mohamad and Sylvie as well to add their thinking. So Manal, as we look out, say 10 years from now, take a look into the 2030s and the pressing public policy challenges that Canada's going to face. What are your thoughts on the opportunities for colleges to make an even larger contribution and impact within Canada's research and innovation ecosystem for the benefit of Canadians?
Not a small question. Maybe I could start, well, first of all, by thanking you for inviting me, and I look forward to the discussion with my colleagues here. And as you can see, it is very much a collaborative effort in terms of how college applied research is supported across Canada. It's hard to look ahead without maybe taking a moment to look at where we are and how we got here. I don't want to sort of reflect too much on the past, but since 2008, I would say there's been tremendous growth in terms of your community and what you've accomplished, with some doubters along the way in terms of your ability to speed up so fast with respect to applied research. Since 2008, there's been significant investments and significant growth that's come along with that. We've seen colleges, the number of them eligible for the College Community Innovation Program triple in that time. And of course, budgets have grown tremendously. And there's been a lot of focus in the past in terms of building capacity. And of course, I know budgets are never big enough. I get that, but I will still acknowledge that it's been a tremendous growth since that time. And we've gone beyond sort of just talking about building capacity. There's a real increasing focus on excellence and impact and advancing sort of the government's, not just the government, but benefits for Canada and businesses and communities. So I think there's a lot to reflect on and appreciate in terms of where we're at. And I think obviously the strengths that got you to this place are the ones that will really pave the way for the future. Perry mentioned the statistic about 95% of your institutions located within 50 kilometers of Canadians. I've heard this stat for many years, and every time I hear it, it's still eye-opening in terms of the reach and the breadth and the accessibility that your institutions provide. So in looking ahead, I think it's building on those same strengths that have served you well with respect to being sort of co-located with those communities and those partners, having a real sense of the needs across Canada in terms of regional strengths, regional priorities, and also gaps in terms of those communities, and being able to pivot and address things quickly. I mean, unlike other post-secondary institutions, your time frame is short. You need to sort of get off the ground running. And there's a real focus in terms of hands-on training for students. And we all know that talent, which I know is a very difficult topic right now, but looking at training of talent and the ability to sort of make sure that they have the technical skills and know-how, those are all elements that we can only build on and advance.
Thank you so much. Mohamad, do you want to build on that?
Well, I think, first, thank you for inviting us to this wonderful event. If I'm not mistaken, this is the first gathering after the pandemic, so it's so nice to be here with you and to meet so many friends and colleagues. I would start by saying that I would echo a lot of what Manal said about the excellent work that was is done by the college and institutes across Canada. Clearly, the different projects that you bring into the funding agencies are really excellent projects that have really a very impactful outcome when we talk about the different regions where the colleges are embedded, And if you look to the spectrum of innovation, there's a lot that you can be proud of, at the social level, at the environmental level, at the health level. And the CIFI is really a proud supporter, as I'm sure the Tri-Council of the college. And I hope that with the discussion today, we'll be able to kind of picture the future and see how can we continue to help you, to support you, to meet your ambition, and how can we really seize great opportunities for the future. Thank you.
Sylvie?
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Perry. I will be speaking French a lot, so when you...
I'll give you time to slip on your headphones to understand that. C'est vraiment un grand plaisir pour moi d'être ici.
It is a great pleasure for me to be here today. So to build on what my colleagues just said, I believe that if I look forward 10 years down the road, I believe that we will see research being done by colleges and institutes. I believe that the research will be present, and they will be taking advantage of all the grants available. At this time, there is a big divide between research and applied research. I believe that research, whether it's applied or blue sky research, we have to look at how we can improve the lives of Canadians. And not just Canadians, but the whole world, the whole planet. So we need to have a sense, but a profound understanding of local needs and realities. And we need to share this knowledge and transfer this knowledge to people who are not as much aware. So 10 years down the road, I imagine that the teams will play a bigger leadership role. We'll have a multidisciplinary teams, and colleges and institutes could play a bigger role. So this is my vision, the vision I have. Applied research is important because it looks at what will happen in the future and why. And if we do not ask ourselves these questions, we might be missing out. Will we look at mixed methodologies? Because we don't have to choose between quantity and quality. We have to establish a link between more fundamental research and applied research to make sure we have the biggest impact at the short, medium, and long term for the future of the planet. And you are in a key role, a key position here. Without you, progress will not happen as quickly. So you have to be there and play your role. And I believe that the vision we will have regarding excellence in research and the way we will look at how we do things will allow you to play a bigger role and for your expertise to be more recognized. Thank you. This is music to our ears to hear this recognition. Yes, there is interdisciplinary impact, and that's for sure. And to move on to the second part of your question, what will be the main public policy challenges and where could the institutes make a bigger role in the next 10 years? Well, maybe I can start. I believe that your question has to do with maybe where can we not have an impact? Maybe this will lead to a shorter answer. But if I look at what's happening today, will your contributions really have an impact on insecurity regarding housing, our ability to build apartments, belonging, the use of space, the understanding that we have of the space and our relationship with the environment. There are the biomedical aspects to all of this as well. So if we look at the projects I really appreciated the work of Anna's team. They presented their work this morning, and they gave me the list of projects that have been funded over the last 2 years. And I think we have to wonder, where could we not have an impact, no influence? And I could not identify a field where we wouldn't be able to have an impact. I completely agree. Is it working now? I completely agree with Sylvie, and I would like to add a few words on a different field. It's a matter of inclusion as well.
All across Canada. And I think the way that they engage with the communities and the different partners that they have also really will inform all of those different elements. So it is more of a question of where they won't be rather than where they will be, because I think across all those issues, and we've seen colleges play a really big role in social innovation. And including sort of Indigenous communities. Now, there's always more that can be done. When I was talking to my team, and many of whom are here, by the way, if there are more specific questions on what we do, with respect to the College and Community Social Innovation Program, in 2022, about 50% of those projects that we funded included Indigenous communities. If your parents were like mine, they'll ask you about the other 50%. So definitely more growth to be achieved. But I think it's a really strong indication of how inclusive and important those different perspectives are, and how colleges are uniquely positioned, I think, to make sure that those different perspectives are brought to the table.
To build on what was said, I believe that as a nation, just coming out of the pandemic and with all the impacts of the healthcare system and the problems that we are facing as a country, I believe that some colleges were very open with regard to healthcare services, and this will allow us to have more options in the years to come. And we could tap on the knowledge we gathered during the pandemic. So social innovation is a new element, and we have to look at all the work that's being done within the industry as well. And I believe that we'll be talking about this later.
To the next question that we wanted to dig into, and it's one that I think about an awful lot. And so we wanted to spend a little time talking about mission-driven research. And first of all, some of you may be saying, well, what exactly does that mean? So we're going to start with Mohamad and sort of talking about the idea that is more and more, I would say, au courant in the context of Canadian research and innovation policy. It was talked about in the Bouchard report as a way to mobilize research capacity and innovation capacity around well-defined problems and challenges. Certainly something that when I was at Genome Canada, we were really trying to drive was a more mission-driven approach to genomics research. And you're seeing it in the European Union's Horizons framework. So I guess I want to start with you, Mohamad. How do you understand and think about mission-driven research? And then what do you see if this is an area that Canada is going to be moving more into? What will be the opportunities for our sector to be really key partners, both in terms of helping define missions, but also be key partners in mission-driven research? And how could we be getting ready as a community to be part of any future Canadian investments in mission-driven research?
That's a loaded question. But, if I reflect on this question from the Canada Foundation for Innovation lens, through the College Fund, we support colleges and institutes across Canada to get access to, leading edge infrastructure in an area of strategic priority that support the colleges to build meaningful and productive partnerships with industry and with their community. And in the last 12 years since we've initiated this program, we were enabling like approximately $30 million of investment on a yearly basis that goes toward the support of the projects across the country. So it's close to $360 million that was invested so far in infrastructure, research infrastructure. Before any submission to SAFI, the college embarked on environmental scan in the region, stakeholder consultation to really identify the needs of the sector that want to serve, which translate after this with a request to SAFI to get the infrastructure needed to bolster these partnerships. So in a way, the colleges are very familiar with the mission-driven. These applications are mission-driven, but for the regional level. And we've seen how this has been transformative across the country. Now, again, looking back, because as Manal suggested, if we are to look to the, to picture the, the desired state in 10 years from now, we need to look back. Again, looking back, and I was talking to Mireille last week, and I said, where are these investments are going? And then clearly we have like 3 big clusters of investment that we're doing. Agri-food is one, ICT is another one, advanced manufacturing is another one. Well, that's great, right? Now, I do recall that the federal government did an extensive exercise in 2019. They organized economic strategic tables where they invited all industry. It was kind of industry-led exercise around 6 topics. And guess what? 3 of the topics that I mentioned were part of these 6 topics that the federal government identified. Now, the question I have at this point, and back to your question, how the college can leverage all the investment that was made in these 3 sectors and bring the conversation to the next level. And how can you tap into the extensive network of private sector partners that you've nurtured in the last 2, 3, in some cases 4, 5 decades for the colleges in Quebec? How can you nurture these partnerships and bring these, these private sector partners around the table and engage with the federal government to resuscitate these conversations where the colleges not only can participate, but maybe lead the discussion around these very important topics. After all, we have a knowledge-based economy, right? And you have a wonderful added value to propose to the industry, to the federal government in an area where now we are facing more and more competition, at the international level. I think that's where I see that the college can really lead the discussion here. And I'm wondering, with a wonderful organization like CICan, what can be done? If I picture the next meeting, would you have like some discussion around these topics? That's just a suggestion. It should be your decision to take that idea or not. But I think that's how I see where the college can participate in mission-driven reflection.
Awesome. Well, we will absolutely use our convening power to create those kind of tables and conversations. And we've already been starting to talk among ourselves with our colleagues here about how we can open up these kind of symposia to have industry partners with us in maybe a more of a co-hosted way. So thank you for that. Manal, how about you? When you think of mission-driven research and its future in Canada, where do the colleges fit?
So there's lots of complexity to this topic, right? We're a big country. I've talked about one of your strengths being sort of in the regions. So it's balancing sort of national and regional kind of interests and needs. And many times they coalesce and sometimes they're not exactly directly aligned. So how do you keep managing sort of like your value add to your communities with their particular interests and needs while contributing to sort of broader national sort of mission-driven elements? And then there's also the need to align. When I think of mission-driven, it's sort of a systems element. So thinking about talent, research, infrastructure, it's thinking about not an institution, but sort of more holistically across the ecosystem, not just across colleges, but other kinds of research organizations as well with universities. So really taking a really big national integrated ecosystem approach. And as anyone knows, that's not easy. It's not easy to get all these different partners and parties on the same page. And then thinking about where Canada rests versus other countries. And I mean, I'll be frank, there's also a need to sort of strengthen alignment across government and the different parts of government that fund the ecosystem. So it's not just a challenge for colleges and how they sit, it's also a challenge for government and how we make those points of connection clearer, more transparent, more fluid. So I think it's a national challenge that requires a lot of different elements to come into play. But I don't want to sound negative. I think I'm just framing that as there are challenges in doing that, but I think colleges are really well positioned. You know, we've talked about your agility, your nimbleness, your responsiveness. You've demonstrated over and over ability to partner with so many different kinds of partners. So I think you are well positioned. You've been at that intersection of applied research. You're driven by practicality. You're driven by hands-on needs. And respond to sort of like the market and what that needs very quickly. So I think there are many strengths you can draw on, but there are many parts of the puzzle that need to come together in unison.
Awesome. Well, just before I bridge to Sylvie, I'll say, and this is where I think strategic incentives from our funders will be really helpful. If you look at the biomanufacturing strategy and the signal that sent to the community to work together in partnership across sectors and across institutions, when the government sets strategic priorities and invests in it, the community will respond. And so I think that's certainly something we saw at Genome Canada when we created a challenge, the community responded. So it's also about, I think, one of the things we want to send back is also, you know, reimagine some of the programming so that our community is able to respond because they will step up. Sylvie?
This is exactly where I was headed. I believe that people are ready to answer the call and to act, but as funders, we have to make sure that we really understand the limits of our programs that could prevent people to act.
Barriers within some of our funding opportunities that perhaps don't fully demonstrate an understanding of the realities of colleges. So we just have to think of the indirect costs of research, to name one that my high school students used to call me dog ears. So I've heard that a lot the past morning, yesterday and today. So I've been paying attention. But I think that's definitely something that we need to do. But if you look particularly within my portfolio, I have the tri-agency institutional program TIPS. So with the CFREFs and the NFREFs and all of the other FREFs, you don't know how many programs I thought there were a year ago because it's some like F, and like, no, it's just people pronounce them differently. What are the limitations? And these work better with true collaborations. So we noticed it with, you know, the CFREFs awards that were done announced last year, so awarded in 2023, I believe, where we saw different universities getting together to propose a project or a hub or other things. How do we open that up, and how do we leverage the college's expertise in partnerships with particularly industry? C'est l'ensemble.
And this is by joining all these forces that we will be even more competitive at the international level. So if we think about Horizon Europe, we have to think that if the more we are, the stronger we are. We can establish contacts. And we have to look at the limitations we have in our programs that would impede us from doing the work that we want to do. We have to look at this.
Rethinking research excellence. Somebody mentioned to me yesterday, like, oh, you know, some of our researchers would like to apply for some of your other funding opportunities, but we'll have to get them to present their CV in a way that'll be familiar to the people who are adjudicating them. Well, that's a bit of a problem. Maybe we need to change things that are being done. So the agencies have been working together on rethinking what is presented in CVs. But there's a lot of work that it needs to be done. So to ensure that we have college representatives on our peer review committees, that we have a deeper understanding of what is done in removing some of those barriers. And I think that will make a big difference for the mission driven as well, because you'll be able to take your place at the table and bring everything that you need to do. But right now I'm more focused on what is stopping access to the table rather than thinking, do you have it? Like, there is a place. The problem is what is stopping that? So that's the look that I bring into my arrival in the past year in my job.
Well, that is awesome. That is awesome to hear. And certainly I think that that's certainly been a theme that's come out over the last day and a half that I've certainly taken away is how do we reimagine the design of programs that have perhaps evolved through defining them through a university-centric lens in terms of, and that's just, that, so there's eligibility that maybe just doesn't, yes, eligibility, but how do we take that to, well, how do we actually really participate and partner to, if we focus on the impact that we're wanting? So I'm going to bridge to a last question, and we want to open up the floor for a good, 10, 15 minutes of conversation. As you think about that, because I know that all of you are very committed to trying to continue to move the needle around how to best leverage the capacity that this sector brings to our research agenda. And you've all been thinking about that in the partnership context, particularly with universities. We have in Canada a very unique characterization that relative to many in the OECD, that much of our research agenda is driven through public post-secondary institutions. And so how are you imagining some of the programming, or where do you want to see some change with respect to college and university collaboration? Maybe Sylvie, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Mohamad and Manal.
I believe that we have to have better knowledge of one another. In one of the sessions where I participated this morning, we talked about the importance of creating relationships, particularly with our communities of the First Nations. I believe that we need to change the discourse in some provinces more than others between colleges and universities. We have experience in our life and we know this, but most researchers in the university sectors, if they do not have children who went to college, they do not know well the college environment. So how could we work together to better know each other? And what are the roles of the funding organizations to encourage the opportunities to share among ourselves and sharing on an equal footing, meaning that we need to change paradigms, and it also means that we need staff education in the granting agencies to have a better understanding of how ecosystems work, or what are the pieces of the ecosystem. Often we will talk about research ecosystem, but if I ask people to name what are the organizations in the ecosystems, people have a puzzled look. And if you're not part of my ecosystem, it means that when I talk about our conditions, of the limits and so on, I could not identify the obstacles. It is a question of learning from one another, of having opportunities to share and to create, and also of creating moments where we work collaboratively together. I hope that with all the work that was done, and Ontario is later than BC, but we have to recognize credits So we're a bit backwards compared to other countries in the world. All that work that was done on the program side, on the academic program side, could influence the creation of new relationships. But the granting agencies have to know what are their roles and their responsibilities and how to educate themselves to have a better understanding of the ecosystem. So it's by having opportunities such as today to be among yourselves, to listen to others, to make sure that we understand. We need to ask questions, and we encourage you to take initiatives and tell us when we don't understand, because we need to have that reflected back to us to know if we understand well, and take the time to tell us so that we could improve ourselves is by developing new relationships and to see how together we could do more. And beyond provinces, when we talk about partnerships between institutions or establishments, is there something that stops a college from BC to work with a university in the center of Canada and another college from the east of Canada, and to work with a college from South America? We need to create among ourselves these relationships and then go to the international level. Very good. Thank you, Sylvie. It's very refreshing to hear your point of view. Mohamad? If we want to talk about partnerships between the universities and the colleges, I think that there are a few parts that we need to discuss. Firstly, we need to have a strategic alignment at the institutional level. I could tell you that at a 30,000 level high vision, I could tell you that there's a lot of overlapping. If now there's a strategic alignment, that is a start.
I think we need to be also mindful of the kind of the geographic imperative as well. You know, if it happens that you are located in a region where you have like 2 other universities, well, that's much easier for you to engage with this university versus another university in another province, which happens to be at 3,000 kilometers. That's the second point. The third point, I think we should be also sensitive to the cultural difference that exists in the university and in the college. And if we are sensitive to this reality, I think, you know, we can better manage the expectation, because if we're thinking about developing a partnership that will live for the next 10 years, we need to know our differences and work around these differences and bring to the table, you know, to this kind of partnership, added value to the other. You know, what's in it for you, what's in it for me, and agree on what's my sandbox, what's your sandbox, and how can we bring to the mix, you know, the other partners that I have or that you have. I think if you start with this kind of frank conversation with this sensitivity to the cultural difference, I think that's a good recipe for success.
My colleagues covered a lot of ground, so maybe I'll just add a couple of points. And one that I have not emphasized enough is communication of impacts. So measuring and communicating impacts, I think, is a really big way that we can help move the needle on some of these points. And this is something that even, you know, within the granting agencies and government, we need to sort of think about more. And along with that comes the ability to sort of better tell the narrative of what is being accomplished, how it's being accomplished, and then why it matters. And linking it to sort of the mission-driven element. I think as we're looking at initiatives more holistically, it provides an opportunity to think about the whole picture and how we can tie sort of the strengths of the different parts of the ecosystem and the benefits. There's some research areas that just are more amenable to sort of that kind of collaboration and engagement versus others. So I think thinking about things in a bigger picture way allows us to think about what the roles of each of the different players are and how we can interconnect these. We are already seeing good examples of college-university collaboration. There's an initiative that is called SONAMI, Southern Ontario Network for Advanced Manufacturing and Innovation. So there's federal government support there. It's a Niagara sort of led by colleges, but it also includes universities such as Queen's and McMaster, and it's focused on advanced manufacturing. So it's a great example of what can be accomplished when all the different parts of the system get together. Obviously, a lot more that can be done in different areas, but this is doable. And whenever I meet with universities, I ask them what kind of collaboration they have with colleges, and you'd be surprised how many of them do. But I don't think there's enough profile there, and there's not enough of sort of building that those connections and profiling what are the practices that work. So certainly there are elements in terms of how we deliver the programs that we have been looking at, continue to look at. There are some barriers, and it's not a zero-sum game, but we do have to look at how we bring the different strengths together and marshal those in a way that makes sense. We're not a country with infinite resources, so how is it that we make the best use of what we have, look at our strengths, how we can leverage those, and retool when things are not working, and continue to adapt and evolve.
Awesome. Thank you, all three. First, can we give a hand to our colleagues' amazing reflections. In fact, we had Manal, and I think some maybe some of your team were there. We had a wonderful presentation yesterday on tsunami as a really excellent example of just what you were speaking about. So, colleagues, we have some time for questions, comments, observations. We'll take. I know we're going to move into lunch after this, but I'd like to give at least 10-15 minutes for questions because this is a really great time with Manal and Sylvie and Mohamad here. So, Lynn.
Lynn Lapostole, je dirige l'Association pour
So I lead the Association for Research in the college. Thank you very much for sharing your point of view. I would like to ask a question to Sylvie, particularly. Integration and inclusion are not synonym in French. Thank you for having shed the light on something I think we have been expressing in the college environment is the logical academic model, where we have the model for research support in Canada. The first reason why many professors cannot do research is a question of time that they do not have. Often researchers are committed as researchers in the technology transfers in Quebec, and they need time to lead projects. And it's an obstacle when we have programs that do not allow to support the time we need to give to research. So I am happy to hear that we're thinking about this. We could repeat and refer back everything we did to document this issue. Thank you for opening this question. And furthermore, could we imagine that the SSHRC and all its skills with respect to social sciences and humanities will become a more important player in college research? Thank you very much for your comments. I do not have answers yet to the first question. The solutions are not easy. We know that the research sector is underfinanced, underfunded. Frédéric Bouchard did document it in his report. How could we try to fill the gap and find a solution? It's not just between the colleges and the universities, because universities whose mission is more about academic training often raise the same question, because in the end, there seems to be a logical model, but in reality, the applications are very different. And we see differences within the universities, between the faculties, between the social and humanities faculties and the ones that are, and the other faculties. We're in 2024. We are rethinking some things. We're thinking of equity. We're thinking of, we have urgent needs in the country and on the planet. Could we imagine that it's time to think about different ways of doing things? And if we want more participation, and if people didn't make demands, well, why? We have to ask ourselves, we have to see what are the boundaries. So we're getting into a reflection time at the SSHRC in my portfolio. So we really need to think about those issues. We have to think about excellency in the research as at the outset. We do not want to look at closely at every situation. We need to have a holistic view, and we have to see what are the obstacles. I believe that this reflection will bring us to solutions to your second questions, to look at this openness. I often ask myself questions with respect to people who self-exclude themselves from making requests. My first request to the SSHRC as a professor, when we received a lot of feedback, it was a nice project, but too much detail, and I was told shouldn't be funded by provincial government. I laughed a lot about that. And then I thought, how could I present it in another way so that we notice that the research is rigorous? It's not because it's social research that it's not rigorous. We have to train these people with respect to the assessors so that they could understand these aspects. So when I talk about excellency in research, it's not only about conditions, it's about how we present the information. What is the criteria? What are the assessments? Or what is the training of the people who are actually doing the assessment? So we have to look at all of this and see what is our leeway or our solutions. How could we influence the real, the people who make the decisions? And we have to recognize that very often when we use the word talent, we will think about students at the master's level or doctoral level, but 27,000 students from the colleges have participated in research projects in 2021, 2022. It's not only the creation of talents, it's the creation of staff highly qualified. So how could we present this so that when I make a request, what am I selling? What am I doing? So we have to look at all these points. Well, thank you very much for your question. Thank you, Sylvie, and thank you for your questions. We have a question here.
I'm Peter Laffin from the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology in Edmonton. Two comments, actually, if you'll permit. One, even though we like to talk about the complaints and the things that aren't going well, I would like to acknowledge that all that we've built together and all of the success we've had is largely thanks to the programs that are in place. Are they perfect? Maybe not, but we do owe you a thank you for that. I'm not just sucking up, but the second comment. One of you mentioned that the university professors and the university system doesn't understand us very well. And so this is a pitch for college and institute-led programs because there's a very good reason. We understand the value of the university system. We understand what they do well and where they come from, because many of us have been involved there as well. We also understand the college system that we're living and breathing. And so when a college-led program is in place, we can properly scope things. We can properly understand both sides of that world. It's a lot like the Tsunami partnership. They have included now at the end a couple of universities that they were able to articulate and to explain, and those universities are saying, yeah, we get it, we want to be part of it, and I think there's some real power there. Thank you.
Excellent comments. Thank you so much. David.
I want to double down on what you just said, Peter, because I had exactly the same thing, but I will say in French.
Let's take for granted that we have an amount that's invested and the agencies will not have more money, and that we have to think about how we will have more impact with the same amount of money. Let's take for granted that we know that collaboration between universities and colleges could have more impact than if we did our projects in a silo. Let's take for granted that universities do not know colleges much. Universities don't know colleges much, but colleges can know universities well, and they can identify experts for a problem, and they could include them in their projects. I think that with this logic, you could understand that if we took a portion of the funds and we tell the colleges, you have to give back this portion to the universities, because some part of the money goes to universities and others to the colleges. But let's say we say you have to give back 66% to universities, or 33 to you, or 50-50, you decide. Imagine what the impact would be to increase it without changing the amount invested. Please think about it. I think that it would be a good idea. I regret the disappearance of Innovuce program. A few years ago, we had a joint program between the university and the colleges. The NSERC had that project. It was too early. Colleges didn't know universities. We didn't have this relationship of trust. I think today is the time. It's more mature. We could double down on that idea. There we go. Thank you, David. Very good comment. Someone else wants to make a comment? I would like to make a comment. I appreciate all the comments. It is important to have reps to have recognition for our accomplishments. And about collaboration between colleges and universities, that's a big issue for us too. The team, there's a few people with me that work at NSERC in the program that supports colleges, and they are here to listen and to learn about the challenges and the concerns that you expressed. Sorry, I'm continuing to improve my French. So it's really a big challenge for us, and it's an important one. We need to find solutions.
Important, and it becomes increasingly clear that this division between college and university research, if we're going to be achieving the important mission-driven objectives, the kind of, I know Simon Kennedy was here talking about the industrial policy elements that we want to achieve. We're not a big enough country that we can ignore those kinds of barriers that are preventing us from maximizing our strengths. I know we have started looking at how we address some of those. We have new programming that colleges are certainly eligible to and are seizing upon. Lab to market, we're seeing some really good engagement from the college community. I think, again, you're uniquely positioned to show your strengths in that kind of initiative. Under Alliance, we are running a pilot with respect to sustainable agriculture that is providing some funding that addresses some of the comments that were made earlier with respect to barriers for college applied research and needing faculty release time. We're looking to see how that goes and how we can expand on that. And in my team at NSERC under research partnerships, we have supports for colleges and we have supports for universities in terms of the college programming and the alliance programming for universities. As we're moving to these more broader mission-driven elements, how can we make those connections? So we also look to hear from some of your institutions that have done really well in collaborating with universities. What are the lessons that you've learned? What's been important? And how can we profile those to foster more of that more broadly? So thank you.
Thanks, Manal. And I think I'm really learning too the notion that both colleagues mentioned about the college-led piece. Like, how do we really think about that in terms of, because I think often it's, if we talk about university college collaboration, it's always the university's in the lead and the college is the junior partner. I think we're really encouraging, given where the system is, that let's reimagine how that leadership might be seen. So really thankful for colleagues for bringing that up. Thanks. And we can see all of the appetite for really bringing ideas to you in a policy partner and a program co-design spirit. And I think you can count on CICan and our community to really be there to help with that. I know that we are close to finishing up for lunch, so let me, Denise, did you have a question? Yeah, go, we'll give, I want to give Denise an opportunity, and we'll take one last question, and then we'll break for lunch.
Can you hear me? Okay. One of the things I wanted to highlight in my position as senior advisor at Nova Scotia Community College is sometimes when we get federal funding and we get all these programs that want to build programs to bring in our historically disproportionately impacted communities, there's not funding earmarked for criteria for people to come in with the proper education to be able to walk into our programs. It always seems that we build this beautiful program that we want to create inequity, but we don't address the systemic inequities that exist in our communities. So one of the things that NSCC has done, and I don't know if it's the reason, but it's some of the things that are working for us, is we have a 2+2 program where community members can come in and do 2 years in a field of study and then go and continue their degree at a university. My son was one of those. He went and he did his business admin degree at the college, went to a university, did his business degree, and then went on to become a CPA. As an Indigenous young man in our community where there's definitely systemic barriers and access to equity and education through the high school experience, kids are talked out of taking Calculus 12. They're talked out of taking all the sciences. So I really see this as a gap that we're creatively working around. But even when we get cohorts and we get specialized programming, we'll say, oh, an industry wants to do, let's bring in a bunch of African Nova Scotian students and Mi'kmaq students to do a program around marine, but they're not addressing that they don't have the competencies to walk into that program. So I want to see, is there a dignified way to do that to, not make students be punished for systemic barriers and experiences. So I would love to see federal pots and funding to come down that has that earmarked in the best way of reconciliation and equity. So just want to put that on the table. Thanks.
Thanks, Denise. Great points. I don't know if colleagues want to respond or just take that back. Manal?
Maybe just thank you for that comment and acknowledge that is something that we've seen and heard in terms of how do we make those connections, and it comes back to a whole of systems approach, right? So as federal granting agencies, we often look at one part of that trajectory, but the whole pipeline has to be looked at if we're really going to meaningfully address sort of the issue of underrepresented groups, and if we're serious about the inclusion element, because there are so many barriers before they get to graduate school. If they get to graduate school, they've done great, right? Like they don't need all of these points of assistance. So how do we even get them to think about that and have them think that those are disciplines that they're encouraged and welcome to be part of? So I fully agree. And I think, again, it comes back to a systems approach, and we have to think about not just our part, but how we facilitate that whole pathway.
And from a building capacity approach, this is where programs and academic programs within institutions and research need to work together, because prior learning recognition, if you're working in remote areas and your research assistants are from the community, why is that not recognized for credit when they can, whether they're 17, 21, 51, or 71 or 72, want to participate in a post-secondary program? How do we document that work to be able to recognize that? So if we're truly building capacity, it's not just about making sure that some of the research money is with the communities that are supporting the research, but also thinking back to that education piece in a longer term. And so it's, I'm not in charge of post-secondary programs, but it's the whole of, exactly as Manal said, it's a whole of system approach. And then how do we do that? But I think it's thinking, if we think about the individual rather than the degree or the program or the project, I think things are a lot different.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Please join me in thanking. I think what you're seeing is we have three really strong champions and their teams behind them. And I really want to thank Manal, Mohamad, and Sylvie for their time, but more importantly, their willingness to listen and to work with us in reimagining how we can be very strong partners for achieving very strong challenge-driven research impact for Canada and involving our community. So merci beaucoup de votre présence aujourd'hui.
Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you very much for your contribution to our objectives, our shared objectives.